Well, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And hey, it's getting to be that common thing. We have yet another slamming musician from Phoenix, Arizona. My new friend, Mr. Mark Blades. How are you, sir?
How's it going, Sean? Doing great.
Pretty good. And another Bobby Sis cook up. I feel like he's going to start knocking on my door for some sort of Canadian beer or something. But
Right on.
so you and I, this is the first time we've actually met face to face. We've been talking back and forth quite a bit. You sent me a kick and EPK there a little while ago. Tell me about your act, Christopher Shayne, which is go ahead.
So, Christopher Shayne is kind of a hodgepodge of different sounds, like trying to quantify it or, nail the sound. I think our elevator pitch is if you took Guns N' Roses and mashed them together with ZZ Top. So it's definitely blues rock based, got an edge to it, got some, definitely some aggression and grit. But we've played, we're in kind of a sweet spot. Like we've been direct support for Dwight Yoakam. We've opened for Godsmack, in Vegas in an arena, open for Blue Oyster Cult in an arena. Our wheelhouse tends to be Skynyrd. So we've done a bunch of shows with those guys. They're fantastic. But that's kind of blues-based hard rock. But, we've done some country shows and, we're not a Blackberry Smoke to the extent of their whole pitch is their too country for rock and roll and too rock and roll for country. We're definitely more on the rock side, but we can hold an aggressive, like the harder edge country crowd. So band's been together for, probably 7 or 8 years now. The names, our singer's name and the original premise of it was just going to be a project. It wasn't going to be a band. And then once the songwriting started, everything just clicked. And then we just started landing these great gigs, and I found myself back in an original band. I'd kind of given up the original band dream and was just, it was time to just, maybe do one big show a year in a cover band, and I think at the time I was in maybe 3 or 4 cover bands when we kind of stumbled into this little project. And first song that was written stuck in my head, and 2 days later I was like, crap, man, I'm gonna be in an original band. And and here we go. 7 years later, and and I've done the best shows with this band, so late in life suddenly, I'm playing arenas. We just got back from a European tour. We just toured the States in November. So it was all stuff that had been kind of pushed onto well, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? We're not going to play an arena. And now I've played an arena, a handful of times, never going to ride on a tour bus, and am riding on a tour bus. So, it's been fantastic.
So, in the words of the immortal Bob Ross, there's no mistakes or just happy accidents, because that kind of seems like you've kind of stumbled on. I do the same thing. Like, I'm in a couple cover bands. I'm working with an artist that does their own material. And some people rip on the cover bands, but I find it's a good place to cut your teeth, to learn your chops, to put a show together, to figure out how to play in front of people. Would you say the same thing?
Yeah, and that's definitely starting out. I mean, everybody does covers to start out, and one of the bands that I'm with here in town, and what kind of actually opened me up into the Phoenix scene when I moved here. I'm not a native, so I moved here about close to 20 years ago.
So, question: are there actually any native Phoenixonians or whatever? Because everybody
there are a few.
Yeah, because I talked to Steve from Flotsam and Jetsam. He was originally from Kansas, and and Dwayne Miller and all the guys that I know there, they all seem to be from elsewhere and wind up in Phoenix.
Yeah, it's a great place. So I mean, yes, the majority, especially the music scene, are from other places. But I just stumbled into a bar that the name was Blues, the Blues Bar, but with two O's so kind of have that booze thing. But I didn't know what I was walking into. I thought it was going to be like maybe a bluesy bar right in my neighborhood or my new neighborhood, and walked in, and it was the cover band was playing Crocus and Loudness, and I picked up the phone and called my old guitar player from my original band back in Jersey, where had come from, and said, dude, this band is playing, they're doing Dio, they're doing Crocus, they're playing Loudness, and he's like, you got to join that band. And I'm like, I do have to join that band. And, and eventually I did join that band. But that walking into that one bar just opened me into this whole scene, and it's a hard rock scene that just kind of goes throughout the whole valley. And it was really just, like you said, the happy accident just walked into this place. It didn't look like a rock club whatsoever. And it just totally opened me up, and I found a second home out here.
So everybody that I talk to out there kind of gives me a little bit of a different answer, and I would suspect it's based upon how busy they are. But some people say the scene is amazing. Some people say the scene is stale. Some people say the scene's a little bit in between in Phoenix. And I can tell you about my hometown. Our scene for rock is pretty starved. I mean, there's not a rock scene per se. If you can do it and get away with it, you can do it and get away with it. But for the most part, it's a lot of singles and duos, acoustic based, that type of thing. So the Phoenix scene, what would you say?
I mean, there's a lot. What would I say about the Phoenix scene? I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do and where you're at. I mean, for Christopher Shayne, it's a little tough for us out here. We don't end up doing a lot of shows, but there are a lot of venues that we could play. But it's an interesting scene. I would say, as far as being accessible and being a scene of musicians that are collaborative and supportive, this is the place. I've never been anywhere where musicians aren't competitive. You know what I mean? The competition here for original bands it's a supportive competition. It's not like cutthroat and you're not going to go to their show, you're not going to help them, blah, blah, blah. So definitely a nice community of musicians here. There are different scenes, and it depends on what you're tapped into, Right. So there's bands like the band Congos blew up out of Phoenix, and never heard of them. I didn't know who they were. They were doing shows. So there's, but exploded, you know what I mean, into like an international act. Every football game for 3 or 4 seasons was playing that song, So there's definitely a scene, it's just what are you into and where are you tapped in. So there's stuff downtown, there's a whole younger scene, there's definitely a heavy, like a big time metal, like a metal scene here. And the hard rock scene, it's there, but it's kind of, it's older. I don't know, I don't want to pigeonhole it, but it's like, it's not hip, and it's not the hip thing in Phoenix. It's not the hip thing, I'd say, kind of anywhere right now. Rock is kind of struggling, everywhere. But if you grew up on rock, like I did, that's just what you love, and it's what you're always going to do, so, and here's a place that we can do that,
in the States. I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the rock scene is more American Midwest. Like there's that sort of area where there's festivals and there's fly-in dates, and there's a lot of that stuff. Maybe a little bit of the East Coast, but that's where you're seeing like your Teslas that go out and your Warrants and your guys like that, Night Ranger. What from what and I see from afar, I do see a very supportive scene, because like I know a number of people from there, from Phoenix. So I get that. What So I take a guy like Dwayne Miller, for example. Dwayne seems to have like 27 drum kits and he plays in 50 bands. Like he's doing,
Right.
a Bad Company one and he's doing his Zeppelin one. Then he plays with Deirdre and
Right.
all this stuff. Um,
Sure.
is there enough on the go that if somebody wants to say, you know what, I'm going to take a kick at this and do it as a living, is it that viable there?
It depends on what kind of living you want to make.
Right.
So I mean, there are a ton of venues. I'd say if you're a solo artist, so that you can make a living doing that. As far as the bands, the cover band scene really is the tribute bands. I mean, the tribute bands are the ones that are being booked. Um, can you make a living at it? That's, I'm not sure about that. I would
Yep.
say probably not. But solo artists for sure. There's a ton of places, you know what I mean? It's a travel destination town, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a million hotels, a million restaurants, and a million clubs, so, a one man band or one person band, duet, whatever you're going to do. Yeah, you can definitely carve out a living here.
So what tends to happen here, just to kind of parallel it, just I guess I'm going somewhere before we go on to Christopher Shayne here, but
Sure.
here the solo or the duo guys will do 3 or 4 shows a day, Monday, Tuesday, and so they're doing a show at like 5 till 7, and then like 8 till 10, and does any of that take place there? Because it just seems like I'd say that to people, and it's like, where the heck do you guys live? Like, what are you eating that you're able to do that many shows? But I play with people in bands that do, I don't know, 20 shows a week outside of playing on the weekend. It's crazy.
Yeah. There's maybe like if you delve into like some corporate gigs, the corporate gigs are the ones that maybe you can do multiples, but most of what I see is somebody's doing, a gig, a day or a night, you know what I mean? And it's just, that's it,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, but if you're a hustler, if anybody who hustles can find the work,
Fair enough. Fair enough. So back to Christopher Shayne. So one of the things I every time that I have somebody on the podcast and they talk about doing opening slots and touring, I always forget to ask what it takes to get on those tours. I've heard many different things. I've worked with people who've had to do many different things. What's working for you guys?
I mean, our booking agency has gotten us on, I mean, those big shows. I'd say the Godsmack show was the company that was doing radio promotion for us. So, and our manager is a hustler, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And he's always working, and he's finding the opportunities and finding the ways for us to get out there. We had a run for a while with a promoter in town, which was amazing. And he locked us into, he was doing like a lot of bike fests, around the country. And I guess we worked with him one time and he liked us and started taking us around to do these festivals as the opening act, which is typically when you go into a new town or whatever, it's normally the biggest band, the biggest local band is what opens up,
Right.
each of those nights or whatever. And he would fly us in. So a lot of fly out dates. And it took like probably 3 shows with him for me to wrap my head around this, like, why you're bringing this band from Arizona that nobody knows, and what, I mean, we're a great band, but there's a million great bands out there. You know what I mean? There's a great band. There's a million great bands probably in that city that we're going to do this festival in, So why are you taking us to this, to like New Orleans to open this fest, to the Outer Banks of North Carolina to open this fest? And what I realized was he was putting on all these different shows. So we had all the logistics in every one of these new cities that he had to deal with. So he probably had a to-do list of 1,500 things, and an opening act was just something to cross off. And instead of dealing with 10 local people, like local bands around the country that he doesn't know, he's never worked with, he goes, Christopher Shayne, they're pros, they're going to be on time, they're not going to miss their flights, they're not, they're going to deliver the show, the crowd's going to like it, and boom, I'll cross that off my list and write the check,
Yeah.
and it was good money. You know what I mean? It was definitely a level that was sustainable for us, that we could make a living doing that. And that's all just kind of in how professional a band is.
Right.
If you get in, once you get in, and if you're good, it can, your professionalism can carry you around, and do things that just seem foreign to me. It's like this, it's just weird that it's not the biggest local band in town opening this festival, but unfortunately he had some health issues and had to, get out of the industry completely. So like that run was a short-lived, but it definitely was a lesson that I think we all took to heart, that it was, that, yeah, we're a good band, but again, there's a million good bands out there. And it was the fact that we hit on all the business cylinders, and we're easy to work with. And, that's really what took us around the country. So.
It's always interesting, right? Because ability can be there, opportunity can be there. The one thing that you can't force is timing, right?
Yeah.
And people talk about that. I talk to a couple of people all the time where timing was off. And you see some bands. I mean, I was part of a band in the 90s that our timing was, we weren't grunge, and grunge hit here in Halifax. And, we moved to Toronto and we were there for a bit, but I mean, we just couldn't outpace what was going on in that industry. And so timing it sounds to me like you guys kind of hit your stride with timing, and then he got out of it. So how are you finding the success now? How are you getting on these tours now? How is that working for you?
I mean, that's between the different label. I mean, I would throw most of it onto our manager, you know what I mean? And whatever his vision is, and putting us out, and just the offers come in, and if it's something that works, then we'll take it. It's been since COVID, and the delay, so when COVID hit, we were ready to start like touring, and like everything went on pause, and when bands typically that tour cycle of, you're gonna write new material for 1 year, you're gonna record it and get ready to put it out the next year, and then the third year it's out and you're gonna tour, that 3-year kind of typical cycle, all of a sudden stopped. So the band that was about to go on tour when the shutdown happened stayed. Then a year later, when things started to open up, that next wave of bands stacked up and they were getting ready to go. But not everybody went out that summer, because not a lot of places were open. There was a lot of concern of what's going to go down. So a lot of them hung back. So then last summer, that third wave, and then everybody went out, because they had to make money. And it was a bunch of double bills and triple bills because, and and now we're in that mix, but we're, up and comers, you know what I mean? So now we're fighting against 3 levels of existing, bands going out. So the last couple of years for us have been gigs that we never would have taken, in the past, a one-off show in like Missouri, where we're driving to it, and now it's like, well, we have to take it, because our, the booking agents aren't going to just keep offering us gigs if we say no all the time, and it's like, and we need to go and play. So, so we take a one-off show, drive out, play the show, get back, and drive right straight back, so that's kind of been the last year to 2 years. We've been taking a lot of shows that, like, 5 years ago, we would have laughed at, like, there's no way we could do that, but it's when you have to do it, you got to do it. So, but the tour that we picked up with this kid, Des Rock, that came through our managers. Like, his manager and our manager know each other, and basically Des, got involved and kind of worked us onto this bill. So it was kind of set originally to be kind of like a label showcase, I think. And then we ended up being like the kind of the odd band out, but we're great, and his thing is definitely a rock, it's a rock band. It's a younger audience. So that was good for us to see, to go through the country. And, when I was saying before about hard rock being like, I don't know if I said it being an old person's game, and I'm an old person, but kind of that thing that it kind, it is. It's just, we like what we like, and that sound is not cool anymore to young kids. You know what I mean? They got to rebel. But his sound is kind of a newer generation of rock. It's still simple. It's still blues based riffs, but it's kind of it's got maybe a Muse kind of feel to it, but not as bombastic. But he's dramatic, and he performs. And some of the things that we saw him do and how he did, his performance, it was good for us to see that again, for me to go, oh man, I remember when I was younger, and I used to do that stuff that as you get older, you're like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. It's kind of, but then to see and go, yeah, you know what I mean? And the confidence of doing it. And it's just like, yeah, it's still, it still works. And it was good to see. It was good to see throughout the country, younger people who wanted to rock, and then Europe with him was crazy. I mean, those crowds were ready to go right away, and that, like, the difference between the US, and you'll appreciate this as a drummer, the difference between the US and Europe is, if you're trying to get the crowd right, you're about to start a song and you start laying 4 on the floor, in America, around beat number 4, 5, or 6, okay, the crowd will start joining.
Yep.
You know what I mean? In Europe, man, beat number 2, they're on it, and they're chanting and they're screaming, like, we didn't even get a chance to put our hands up yet to start telling people to clap, so it was like, those shows were insane. So definitely a younger generation is rocking, and I'd say that's a dude. Definitely check out Des Rocks, DESROCS. So,
definitely check him out. And I was in Dublin in August. I played a wedding of all things over there, and they have, I don't know if you've ever been, but they have walking streets, so there's like no bike traffic, right? And I remember standing right in the middle of the block, and all 4 corners were all music in the bars at 10 in the morning. Stuff, and just raucous, man. And it was like a Tuesday. It was incredible. A theory that somebody floated to me, and I think it could be viable. The kids and old rock music, they're used to recordings now are so precise and precision, there's a little bit of flub on the hi-hat, we'll fix it with the Pro Tools, or the bass is a little off, we'll do a punch in. So they're so used to almost machine-like that if they go and they listen to like an old Deep Purple album that kind of has the tempo, up and down a little bit, they get all freaked out. And that was floated to me, that they're used to precise and they're not used to, human, which I don't know how you feel about that, but I can see some viability in that.
That could definitely be. And then the other thing that is the simplicity of something, you know what I mean, and the repetitive beat, and that's just because they want to move. It's like going to a dance club. You know what I mean? And the dance club, a lot of times, those beats are 4 on the floor, you know what I mean? So you can't screw it up. Like you can't go off beat. If you are off beat, you're only off beat for a split second, then you can get back. Anybody can get back,
right?
And it's definitely viable. The other thing too, is it's just the music of the soundtrack of your parents is not what is cool when you're young, that's fair. Like I was not a fan. Like I grew up in Virginia, in small town Virginia. There were no bands. Like when I was in high school, there was nobody. I didn't know any. I knew one guy who played guitar. So like parties, there were no bands playing parties. There just was not a thing. And it was very much country music and Southern rock.
Mhm.
And I couldn't, not that I couldn't stand, but I was not a fan of Southern rock. It's just like annoying. I was Motley Crue, Dawkins, I'm all
Yep.
in on that. And as I started playing more and I guess developing as a musician or develop my ear, it's like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? I started to embrace all that stuff. But when I first heard it, or even some of the classic rock stuff, you know, maybe not classic, but like the old school, like the golden oldies
Yep.
stuff. You know what I mean? That was the soundtrack of my parents, and it was like, it's not cool, But now it's like, shit, of course, it's the coolest stuff, So it's all that, it's whatever the thing is that I think, and music is driven by the youth, and um, and it comes around. It definitely cycles, and this was the first time I started to see that audiences were ready to rock, because we were warming up his crowd, you know what I mean? So they were ready, you know what I mean? And like, we didn't find that we had to really pull stuff out of them, so really, really, he's tapped into a good thing, and it yeah, definitely, his riffs are simple, and he adds some theater to it, kind of like Freddie Mercury kind of vibe. He's got all of Prince's like moves, doesn't sing like Prince, but the way Prince used to turn with the guitar and kind of and slink across the stage and all that stuff, this kid got it, you know what I mean? And he's not pretending to be Prince or anything. He's just he just either saw it and picked up on it, or just naturally has that thing in it, so it's definitely
I get where you're coming from, because I get ripped sometimes with people around here. They're like, "Oh, you're like the Motley Crue," and the connotation is that I'm listening to music that doesn't have good performances, and it's like, well, they're good performances, but I also want to see stuff get blown up, and I can appreciate a guy standing on an X singing and tapping his foot, but I can't endure it for a long period of time. That's just the way. I have to see a show. I did my best to send Gene and Paul's kids through university, as you can see, right? I say that all the time. And it's funny, like, listening to it with Iron Maiden, Live After Death, and Aces High, the first song, and a friend of mine's son is like, "That's sped up from when it started." Yes, that's called the human factor. They're just not used to hearing it, right? And it's just a different time. It's just a different time. Okay, you know what, man? So, Christopher Shayne, where are my viewers going to find out about you guys? Because you sent me the info, but straight from the source. Where are we going to find out about you?
I mean, our YouTube page. So, I mean, just search Christopher Shayne, Shayne. Like, it's got to have that Y in there. We do everything as make it as difficult as possible.
Absolutely.
Because there's a bunch of Christopher Shaynes without Y's and whatever. So, we're the ones with the Y. But yeah, definitely. That's it. I mean, all your Instagram, Spotify, Amazon, like we're all there. So
I'm finding YouTube. I always like to subscribe to the YouTube, the official. Well, you guys are doing good on your subscribers, and I mean, I'd love for a musician to talk about that, because it's hard building a YouTube channel. People don't understand, right? It is very hard, because people's engagement level is not high, and you gotta do an awful lot.
Yeah. And you're not in control of it. I mean, we have like, you could try all you want, and it doesn't matter. So we had a video that we did for a song Nice Ride, and that's the biggest one that we have as of yet. I got a call coming in. Anyway, let me just send them to voicemail. Okay. But that video, pretty big budget. And it's a splashy song's about like going to hang out at the beach. And so it's got that whole LA Malibu beach party vibe going.
Yep.
And when it was released, it didn't pop on YouTube, you know, and there were a couple people in it who were like, I don't know, who had big followings. So it was like, well, their fan base should be picking up on this, you know what I mean? And it was just stagnant. So it was like, all right, maybe there was something to it. And like, so the video got re-edited, you know, because we were like, well, maybe it was too racy because there was you know, and there were a couple scenes in it that were really not racy at all, but it was enough to keep that it put it on the censor. So one was a scene where one of the main characters like stands up as they're driving down the Pacific Coast Highway in a Jeep, and stands up and like kind of, you know, leans back, you know, out. And I guess it was encouraging dangerous behavior. So like
I'm watching that right now.
Yeah. So it was a longer clip originally. And then the other one was, there was a makeout scene between the two main characters in this trailer, and the girl throws the gentleman down on the bed, and that was, I guess, pegged as being aggressive sexual, you know, conduct. So once those two things were out, then that video like blew up, you know. But had we not known anything about that, had we not known that these people in it had big followings and that it should be getting a certain amount of traction, we never would have looked twice. We would have just said, oh, it's just not, you know, it's just not popping. But
and there's so much, like, so I have a YouTube studio now, and I follow the analytics like you wouldn't believe on my channel and the artists that I'm working with, and it's just really interesting to see. So I had Bobby Brown, Cherry Pie Girl. I
have a Bobby Brown story. All right, go ahead.
Okay, well, so anyway, she goes on. She goes on. We do the interview last week, and all of a sudden, my last 7 days is almost 50% men, and the women went down. It's like, I wonder why that is. And I figured it out in a hurry. It was because we had Bobby on there last week, right? But it's just fun to watch. But it's the engagement piece, man, that people miss. They think it's the views and it's the engagement.
Yeah, for sure. And who knows? You know, I mean, we had a video that was done, like somebody just on their cell phone. It was we were doing a fly out show. I think it was one of those festivals that I was talking about before. I think it was New Orleans. And when we got to the airport, you know, we traveled with so many guitars. And I think like at that point, we have 5 guys in the band, including the drummer, and we made him take 2 guitars on the plane. So it's like we're there with like 10 guitars. One of the people working the counter said, "Oh, are you in a band?" And like we're like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, sing a song." And then like the guys like did an a cappella version of, I think, Midnight Rider maybe, or Seven Bridges Road or something like that. And somebody on their cell phone like recorded it and just uploaded it to Southwest. And then all of a sudden, like that video was like, within 3 days, it had 250,000 views, you know, and I was just, you know, 3 guys singing a cover song in an airport.
No rhyme, no reason.
No rhyme, no reason.
That's it. Well, look, my friend, we gotta get out of here. I want to thank you very much for doing this. It's nice to finally meet you. I'd like to stay in touch with you to see what's going on with you guys throughout the summer, because believe it or not, the summer is coming fast, man.
Oh my God, yeah, I know. I got to get my AC fixed in my truck.
That's it. Rick, please, thank you, sir.
Awesome, Sean. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Peace.